As Anna packed her belongings in the spacious New York penthouse, preparing for her escape abroad, her boyfriend Christian Grey, the billionaire CEO who had been feigning amnesia, stood there with a cold expression, warning her to gather her things and move out quickly because his girlfriend was about to move in, and seeing her there would make him jealous. Anna didn't lift her head, simply responding with a faint agreement, her voice steady and detached. Christian showed no suspicion, continuing his act by insisting she stop claiming to be his girlfriend, as his sensitive girlfriend would get hurt. Anna paused briefly, then nodded obediently, keeping her thoughts to herself. She had no intention of explaining that this time she was changing her identity completely, fleeing abroad without a trace, vowing never to feel even a sliver of affection for him again. Since he enjoyed pretending to have amnesia, she would play along to the end, knowing he had long wanted to rid himself of her, never to cross paths again. The night before their planned wedding, Christian, the possessive husband and obsessive alpha male in this dark romance, suddenly claimed amnesia, remembering everyone except Anna. That day, she had obtained a drug capable of restoring lost memories, rushing excitedly to surprise him, only to overhear his conversation with his brothers in the private lounge of his luxury Manhattan club. They praised his clever ploy of faking amnesia to deceive her seamlessly. Christian casually mentioned dragging it out for another month before returning to his side piece, maintaining his image as a devoted boyfriend. He explained that his side woman wouldn't tolerate betrayal, and if he crossed that line, she'd vanish from his world forever, a cost he couldn't afford. So he hid it masterfully. His friends agreed, laughing that as long as the deception held, he'd enjoy endless pleasure. No one noticed Anna standing outside, struck like lightning, the betrayal shattering her completely. Numb and devastated, Anna stumbled back to their shared penthouse overlooking Central Park, pulling out all her documents. She visited the local office, facing the clerk's inquiring gaze, hoarsely requesting a name change. After reviewing her papers, the clerk handed her a pen. With trembling hands, she signed her new name Adeline Riley. Staring at the unfamiliar identity, a bitter smile tugged at her lips. From now on, wherever she went or whatever she did, Christian, the mafia boss in this marriage of convenience turned enemies to lovers saga, would never find her. With the paperwork done, night had fallen. She hailed a cab, pulled out her phone, and searched for flights. Though the name change needed a month's approval, she booked a ticket for the 1st of next month to Melbourne. Then she messaged the study abroad agency to accept their offer. The next morning, Anna cleared out everything tied to Christian. The gifts he'd given her during their age gap romance, the matching outfits they'd bought as a grumpy sunshine couple, love letters from their college days, filling 5 boxes. She dragged them one by one from the villa-like extension of his penthouse and dumped them into the trash. Amid her labor, a global limited edition sports car screeched to a halt nearby. Turning, she saw Christian emerging, his arm possessively around another woman, striding boldly without hiding. Anna knew his brazenness stemmed from assuming she'd overlook his actions during his amnesia phase. From the start, Christian had denied her as his girlfriend, ordering her things thrown out of the penthouse. She'd thought she'd end up homeless, but the neighboring luxury condo owner suddenly contacted her, renting it at a rock-bottom price while claiming to be heading abroad. Back then, she'd seen it as luck. Now it was clear as his self-directed scheme to keep her close, fearing she'd truly leave in this forced marriage twisted by revenge and jealousy. Recalling the month of deception, Anna found it laughable. Ignoring whatever act he planned today, she hoisted the last box and emptied it into the bin. Christian glanced over, his face darkening at the sight of the discarded items. He questioned why she'd thrown them away. Anna shot him a sidelong look, her tone flat, pointing out his supposed amnesia and how he could remember them. Realizing his slip, Christian adjusted his expression, feigning indifference, claiming it was just a casual question and that he only liked his current woman now, the one who'd cared for him after his accident in a distant city. Anna curved her lips slightly, eyeing the woman in his arms. Heavy makeup, curvaceous figure, skimpy attire, fox-like eyes gleaming with triumph. A new face, likely the most satisfying bed partner he'd had during this period, paraded home so boldly. Not wanting to waste words, Anna hummed an acknowledgement and turned back into the villa. At 8 that evening, the doorbell rang. Setting down her packing bag, she opened it to find the woman Christian had brought home. The woman waved, her smile not reaching her eyes, introducing herself as Chloe and saying she'd be staying at her boyfriend's place for a while. As neighbors, she suggested exchanging contacts. Anna refused without hesitation, turning to leave. Chloe snatched Anna's phone, swiftly adding herself on the app, then returned it with a cheeky grin, suggesting they become friends since they'd see each other often. She then asked if Anna had any protection measures, as they'd used up the box bought that day and needed to borrow some. Anna's face paled, her hand trembling as she took back the phone. She denied having any. Chloe didn't relent, mocking that of course she wouldn't, since Christian didn't want her anymore. Anna recognized the deliberate provocation, ignoring it and pulling the door to close. Chloe gripped the handle, then dramatically collapsed to the ground, tears streaming as she accused Anna of not lending simple items for a dinner for Christian and pushing her instead. Anna's heart jolted, caught off guard. Before she could react, Christian appeared, rushing up the steps to scoop Chloe into his arms. He glared at Anna, his tone laced with hidden fury, declaring Chloe innocent and demanding Anna be polite to his current girlfriend. Without glancing at Anna's expression, he carried Chloe away, his words piercing like daggers, making Anna clench her fists tightly. She stared blankly at their retreating figures vanishing into the twilight, then lifted her hand expressionlessly and slammed the door shut with a bang. In the dead of night, Anna's phone vibrated on the nightstand, waking her. Rubbing her eyes, she instinctively answered. The screen jumped to reveal an expanse of pale skin covered in kiss marks, accompanied by ambiguous moaning sounds. The shaky camera captured explicit scenes, jolting Anna fully awake. Realizing what was happening on the other end, she froze like a statue. Seconds later, Christian's low, desire-filled voice came through the speaker, warning her not to bother Chloe again, noting how Chloe had seen through her little schemes. Chloe cooed why he sided with her, suggesting he loved her body so much he didn't want to confess and still craved more enjoyment. Christian grunted in affirmation, the lens focusing on his face, lost in ecstasy. Anna's heart turned to ice. She bit her lip hard, blood filling her mouth as the breathing grew frantic. Unable to bear it, she hung up, her sleepy eyes now flooded with tears. 2 days before leaving, Anna received confirmation that her name change was approved. She went out, retrieving her new ID and passport as Adeline Riley. Returning home at dusk, the weather chilly, she stepped out of the cab with a drink in hand, only to spot Christian waiting at the door. He seemed to be anticipating her return, his eyes flickering uncertainly as he asked where she'd been. Anna unlocked the door, her tone calm, inquiring if there was something wrong. Christian pocketed his hands, pretending nonchalance, mentioning a weather forecast for heavy rain tomorrow and advising her not to go out. It was obviously a lame excuse to ensure she stayed put, fearing he'd lose track of her. Anna wanted to laugh but held back, nodding that she understood. Seeing her indifferent demeanor, Christian felt an inexplicable panic. Something about her recent state seemed off, but he couldn't pinpoint it. On departure day, Anna rose early. With her flight at 2 in the afternoon, she discarded the remaining items, gazing at the empty room now holding just 2 suitcases. She exhaled deeply in relief. At 10, the doorbell rang. Peeking through a crack, she saw Christian's buddies. They addressed her sympathetically, acknowledging her exhaustion from his condition, assuring her the doctor said he was improving with medication. They hoped for his quick recovery, so everyone could attend their wedding. Today marked their 7-year anniversary, and they'd prepared a surprise. Anna listened quietly as they recited their scripted lines, cooperatively asking what it was. They urged her to come along. Before she could respond, one guy's phone rang. A minute later, they shifted, saying there was a hiccup with the surprise, so she'd wait, and they'd pick her up that evening. With that, They dashed off into the rain. Watching their car fade into the downpour, Anna turned and wheeled down her luggage. 10 minutes later, a taxi arrived. The driver helped with the bags first. She held an umbrella, hugging the wall as she left the villa. Passing the car parked next door, she heard odd noises from inside amid the pattering rain. The woman's voice dripping with seduction, questioning if he was restoring his memory soon, as time was up. Christian replied he couldn't leave her so enticing, postponing it to evening. Anna halted, turning to see the sports car rocking more violently, her heart constricting as a tear escaped. The driver called out, asking if she was ready. Anna wiped her eyes calmly. This was the last tear she'd shed for Christian. She stepped forward, folded her umbrella, and boarded the passenger side. As the door clicked shut, the car's window lowered, but Anna didn't notice Christian's puzzled eyes or Chloe's dismissal that it must be a mistake. Anna pulled out her expired ID, snapping it in half. The driver, surprised, asked if she didn't need it. She nodded lightly, saying it was expired and unwanted. From now on, everything was a fresh start. Anything tied to Christian she discarded. By 5 that afternoon, the rain had ceased. Back at the villa, Christian opened the car door, gesturing for Chloe, still buttoning her shirt, to get out. She pouted at the time on her screen. Christian dodged her advance, his tone lazy yet firm, reminding her from the start it was a 2-month game, now over. She had to exit. Seeing his coldness, Chloe reluctantly complied. Christian rolled down the window, hit the gas, the lingering scent of passion dissipating in the wind. He smiled faintly at the navigation, showing the shortening distance. Parking in the Hilton Hotel garage in downtown Manhattan, he skipped the main hall, heading straight to his suite. After the afternoon's romp, his clothes were rumpled. He needed to freshen up. Before entering the bathroom, he called his buddies, giving instructions. They chuckled in unison, assuring him Anna had agreed to come that morning, and they were en route to fetch her. They teased him about how to pull off the act after 2 months without flaws. Christian dismissed their banter, cursing playfully, tossing his phone on the sofa. Half an hour later, he emerged towel-drying his hair to incessant ringing. Opening the screen to 20 missed calls, his heart raced. Suppressing the panic, he answered, demanding what happened. She's mine. Every breath she takes belongs to me. No one else can claim her, not even her own freedom. In this tale of a billionaire CEO's obsessive grip, where possessive husband meets submissive little wife in a whirlwind of dark romance and forced marriage, Christian's world of luxury. Private jets whisking to Italian villas, Cartier jewels adorning necks during penthouse galas, Van Cleef bracelets clinking on yachts in the Mediterranean, clashed with the raw edges of revenge and jealousy. Anna, now Adeline, had slipped away, her pregnancy with his heir a secret she'd discovered that morning, the age gap between them amplifying the grumpy sunshine dynamic that once sparked their enemies to lovers' fire. Yet the high sweet memories lingered, like when he'd whisper your mind, baby girl, or good girl, mine to ruin, in those touch her and die possessiveness fits. As calls flooded in, revealing her vanishing act, Christian's obsessive alpha male rage boiled, vowing to track his little wife across oceans, for in this mafia boss's realm, no one escaped his claim. Christian's brothers reported the empty villa, her belongings gone, no trace left. Panic surged through the billionaire CEO as he realized his elaborate deception had backfired. Racing back in his private jet from a quick business detour, he scoured the penthouse, finding only echoes of their luxury lifestyle. The red room untouched, punishment tools idle. Jealousy twisted him, imagining her with another, but she was his pregnant heir-bearer, bound in their marriage of convenience. He'd find her, drag her back to the Italian manor, where obsessive whispers of your mind would seal her fate again, in a cycle of dark romance and forced embraces. She's mine. Every inch of her body, every secret she hides, belongs to me alone. Touch her and die. I'll ruin anyone who tries. The search began, spanning continents, his mafia connections mobilizing. Anna, as Adeline, boarded the flight to Melbourne, leaving behind the age gap torment, the enemies to lovers' ashes. In her new life, she'd build without his shadow, but Christian's possessive husband instincts screamed she'd return, submissive to his dominant call. Their story far from over in this whirlwind of revenge, jealousy, and undying obsession. Anna had vanished into the world, but for Christian, the obsessive alpha male, she remained his little wife, pregnant with promise, mine to ruin in the luxury of their twisted bond.